There he is.
Hey, man.
Hey man, sorry it's been a crazy little travel morning, so thanks for bearing with me.
Dude, thanks for being here. I
Of
can't
course.
believe it seems like you've had a pretty big day already.
Yeah, I've been going since 4 in the morning. So
Oof.
yeah. Yeah. So it's I was telling someone the other day, it's like when it rains, it pours. So let me see if this is a little bit better here. Yeah, that's better for you. Yeah, when it rains, it pours. So just, navigating all the travel and then I'll get a nice break in a couple weeks. So, it's what it is, man. You
Yeah,
can't
man.
you can't ask for opportunities and then when they come, complain or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah. Hey,
Yeah, brother. That's what it is.
how'd it go at FGCU?
Oh, it was great, man. It was wonderful. I was there for a day, kind of a day and a half, and I worked with their like they have an all-star like jazz combo, and then they have like a big band and then I worked with a couple drummers as well. So they got a beautiful campus down there in Brandon. Do you know Brandon? Yeah. Brandon's doing some really incredible work. So he and we actually are gonna try to figure some other stuff out because he and I started kind of chatting, and I think there's some ways that we can kind of bring more jazz to like all of Florida because like I'm doing a lot of things in Jacksonville. He's doing a lot in South Florida. Then there's folks doing stuff in Orlando. Then there's my friend Howard Paul doing stuff in Savannah. So we're gonna try to bring things together. More.
Yeah, that's actually where I grew up is Fort Myers. So I always like to start with talking about your background. What was your middle
Great.
school band like?
Oh man, so middle school for me was the turning point. And I always sing this woman's praises. She's still alive. Her name is Gail Henley, and she was the first woman who basically told me I had a talent on the drums because kind of what you were explaining with the student Noel. Like I grew up in church, so growing up in the Black Pentecostal church, playing drums, playing organ, like that wasn't, it was, my friend Dr. Fedara Hadley and we call the Black church often a conservatory because it was just this place where, the parents put their kids kind of like on this pew near all the instruments. And then they either were in the choir or preaching or whatever. So it was this place where music was as natural as eating so I had this talent. So by the time I got to middle school, I actually wanted to play saxophone because for me, I was like, man, I've been playing drums since I was 2. And at that time, I was 12. So I was like, oh, I'm a pro. She was like, well, you're not really good at the saxophone. She's like, yeah, a lot of that natural connection that she was looking for to the instrument I didn't have. And so she was like, do you play anything else? So I was like, oh, I play drums. I've been playing in church. So she was like, oh, well, baby, there's a drum set and there's some sticks back there. Go and play. And so I just played some funk grooves. And she was like, take that saxophone home. And I've told the story many times. She's like, take it home and don't ever bring it back. You're going to be my drummer. She's like, but I'm going to teach you about percussion. And so that's when she put me in the marching band. We had a little drum line. And then I also started learning concert percussion, timpanis, all the mallet instruments and stuff like that. And so she was very pivotal for me because she helped me to realize like this sort of pseudo talent that I thought that I had, that I could do something with it and that it wasn't just something that was ordinary. And I often say I credit her with putting me on this really positive path of where I am today.
Yeah, cool. So at the middle school, they had like drumline stuff.
Yeah, it wasn't probably what you would be accustomed to like or like drum corps, but it was basically like some old, marching snare drums, some old tenor drums. We had a set of quads, we had a couple sets of marching cymbals. And so myself and maybe like 8 guys and a couple girls, we kind of donned ourselves as the drum line for the football team. So we would make up some cadences. There were a couple guys who I don't know if you ever heard of the college. It's called Florida A&M University.
Yeah,
Oh,
of
well, you
course.
would. You're Floridian, but particularly in the north side of Jacksonville, like the Black area, the urban area, there were a lot of FAMU graduates that would come back to high schools and they would share some of the cadences. And so I learned a lot of the cadences. And so first I learned, through snare drum because they were like, you got hands. So I was playing snare drum. Then I kind of played tenor drum for like a day or two. And then the quads were what I really loved. But I was so little, I was like I was like 4, 5, carrying these quads around, trying to,
Just dipping
but
over.
I
Yeah.
think, right. But I think I was amazed at, and it's probably like what I love about melodic drumming now, even bebop drumming started with quads because just the tuning and the or whatever. So anyway, yeah, we had a little. It was a raggedy drum line. It wasn't nothing. It was raggedy, but it gave me kind of an introduction to that world, and it was fun and it was communal. So I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah. The reason I was asking is, a lot of middle schools barely have one concert snare and one bass drum, and other
Right.
schools have, this armada, and that can really
Yeah.
change, your progress.
Yeah, we and now mind you, it was the equipment was old as hell.
Yeah.
So it was, I mean, those snare. I wish, you know what, they're probably still there. I mean, because when we got to them, they were these old. They may have been Ludwig drums. They had to be 20, 30 years old then, and that was when I was 12. So I can imagine, now, but it was a good entry point and a way to get guys, especially with a lot of energy, out on the field. We had to learn how to walk and run with the drums. It's very physical, and so it was a great starter point for me.
All right. And then moving on towards high school, what was that like?
So that was another thing. So Gail Henley taught me that it was possible to take drumming beyond church. And my mother always used to say to me, "You're going to be more than a church drummer," So Gail Henley kind of she put that in action. High school, I always say I'd never forget. I walked in the first week. I was at a school of the arts, and it was the craziest thing to me because I grew up in like the school where I learned marching. It was like a preparatory school, but our school of the arts, it was weird. It was like, I'd see people, dressing in different kinds of clothing. I'd see kids that were goth kids that, I mean, you had your athletic kids, your goth kids, your kids from all kind of, alternative punk bands. I mean, it was like a melting pot. So it was great. And then I remember at the school of the arts, they wanted all of us to audition for every band. Like if you were in the band program, you had to audition, and so I auditioned for jazz band. I didn't even know what the heck it was. So they had me play different grooves or whatever like that. And then I always say like the second week, they put up the results. I didn't even think I didn't even think I was gonna get to the audience. I've been up since 4 a.m. So forgive me. But anyway, I didn't think I was gonna get in any band. I was just happy to get into the School of the Arts. And then I saw my name on the Jazz One list. And I was like, whoa, Jazz One. And they were like, dude, you just made the top jazz band. You kicked out a senior. I was like, what? I don't even know what jazz is really. I'd heard the name. And so I like, cause my cousin had given me like a couple Oscar Peterson records and things like that, but I didn't really know what it was. But long story short, yeah, man, I got in the jazz big band. And so ironically, it's funny because I'm doing this interview with you, and you saw I just posted 2 days ago. I have a big band drumming book coming out, and I tell this story in that book how I got introduced to big band at 14 years old. So it's interesting talking to you about it. So yeah, man, I that changed my life because that set me up for college. Being able to play in a big band, and then we started I had a combo in high school called Quick Changes Quintet because all the band members kept changing. And then I got introduced to Juilliard in my junior year. So high school was really that path where a lot of things kind of become illuminated. And I think God, I'm a believer in God, begin to like kind of show me these things and kind of put my feet on a path that was like, this is where you're headed. Cause I look at, now like at 40 years old, I'll be 41 in a couple of weeks. It's like, man, high school absolutely prepared me for everything that I'm doing now, from not only being a player, a performer, but also being an educator. So yeah, high school was great. I had Ace Martin is one of the most dynamic band directors. He was one of those traditional like big band directors. He played trumpet now we have more educators that are like teaching rhythm section, but back then, this as a drummer, you didn't really get taught. Aside from playing the hits, everything was about section playing. And so it's funny, a lot of what I learned from him, I now apply with my big band. So high school was great. It was an incredible place, and it kept me in a really innovative, creative place. And I would just say this lastly, it helped me to find my tribe, which I think is the most important thing a child can ever do and a parent can do for a child, is to put them in an environment where they get to find other like-minded people. And from that like-minded connection, you then can go deeper and further into whatever the direction is that you want to go. So yeah, that's high school for me.
Man, I can't believe how well spoken you are after being up since 4. That was nice, dude. That was impressive. You could say no more words for the rest of the day. You'd be good. That was sick. Yeah, no, absolutely, man.
Hey, I haven't even had my coffee yet.
Are you serious? Dang, dude.
That is on the agenda after we finish.
Sure, get the strongest one you can, man. So that kind of segued into, you were talking about the book coming out, which we're all very excited for. But you had talked about on Drumeo that when you first started writing, it wasn't very good, and you had like coaches. So can we talk about that? Like what wasn't good about it?
Sure. So it's so funny. So I'm gonna, I'm always about encouraging people, because which is why when you hit me up, I was so happy. I love whatever you're doing. So you count me in. But I love doing these interviews because I like to encourage people. I was dating a girl at the time when I started writing. Because first, let me just say this: I've been writing since I was a kid. I always say I was that fat kid writing poetry to girls, like sending, the little notes and folding them up or whatever. So writing was always a tool that I felt the most comfortable with. So I've been doing that. It wasn't until I left Christian McBride's band that I went and met with Chamber Music America, and they were like, "Hey, Ulysses, what do you want to do now?" And I was like, "Well, man, I've got this journal of things that I've been writing since I left school about like career stuff to everything I wish someone taught me." And they were like, "Wow, Ulysses, that's amazing. Sounds like a book." And they were like, "A lot of colleges need that." So I was like, all right. So they said, you need to develop that writing. Because at this point, it was just journal entries. So they were like, you need to develop your writing. So I had this idea to start a blog. And so I was like, okay, I'll start a blog. I'll do it on my website. I'll do it on Facebook. And at the time, I was like, I'll just write about stuff that I've been writing about on the road. Because when I would be on the road traveling, I'd see, a beautiful mountaintop and I'd write about it, very like poetic, ethereal stuff, whatever. So I was dating this girl who went to a really great college, and I read her a couple of my blog entries, and she was like, "Your writing kind of sucks. Like, I'm a writer. Like, you should like just stick to drumming." And I, basically, was like, "Okay, well, this shows me we're not meant to be." And it wasn't that I think my writing sucked, but I think it was too emotional, because I thought what being a writer was like pontificating. It was like the tree, the sea, the foe, the va, just like as opposed to like when I got with my writing coach, she's like, "Ulysses, what the hell do you want to say?" "I want to say that I want to go to the tree, and once I got to the tree was beautiful." She's like, "Write it, just say it." So anyway, I put out an ad on Facebook, and I said to people, because man, I'm one of those people, if you criticize me, I'll listen to you, and then I'll figure out how to correct it. So I put out an ad on Facebook, and I said, "Hey, y'all, I'm starting a blog. I'm looking for writing coaches." I happen to have a cousin like a distant cousin, who was a writing professor at a college. And she was like, "Ulysses, I'm a fan of, what you're doing. Talk to me." And so she was like, "Send me some of your writing." So she sent it to me. And she said, "Well, first off, you have a writing voice." She was like, let's be clear. You have a really good writing voice. She's like, "And you actually have something to say." She said, "But you're taking way too long to say it." And then she said, "You're a little bit not like into yourself, but it's like you're kind of into your own voice, and you haven't really clarified your voice." And so I was like, "All right, well, teach me." So she's like, "All right, I'm warning you, your ego needs to be ready, because when you send me stuff, you're gonna see red everywhere." And so, man, I never forget, I sent her the first entry, and it looked like the paper was bleeding. It was red marking everywhere. And I wrote her an email like defending my points. And she was like, "This is exactly what I said to you. If you want to get better, stop defending yourself and look at what I'm crossing out." She said, "I'm not saying the writing is wrong. But for whatever reason, I had a lot of grammatical issues. She was like, that's what I'm dealing with. I'm trying to clean it up. So man, I was like, I apologize to her. And man, she's been my writing coach now. She's helped me basically through 3 books. She's helped me through, now I'm a contributing writer for Jacksonville Music Experience, Florida Times Union. I mean, there's nothing that leaves my laptop to go out to the public that she doesn't touch. And now it's funny, there's like 1 or 2 red marks on the paper. so I say all that to say, like when I've had different drummers and different people hit me up and be like, oh man, I want to write. And I'm like, well, do you just want to write a book because you want to be known? Or do you want to write because you actually love writing? Because if you really love writing, you need to start to build an audience first around your writing. And that was what the blogs did for me. Like, and then I started writing about my relationships. I started writing about, femininity, masculinity, the feminist movement, anything. I started writing about a lot of the kind of taboo topics. And then my audience started growing because people were like, oh, shoot, like you're actually talking, especially within the urban community. I started talking about issues that were really plaguing African Americans. And so I just started writing my own stories. And man, I mean, at a certain point, I started like getting approached by major like publications like, hey, do you want to do this? And I'm like, oh, I want to kind of stay on the textbook side. Like I'm fine to drop an article every now and then, but I didn't want to become like somebody writing for Rolling Stone and like talking about men's versus Mars versus Venus. Like I didn't want to get into that. I wanted to keep my writing voice specifically for textbooks and furthering my academic agenda. So yeah, man, that's a little bit of my journey, and it was all about humility and being willing to get better. And now, that same a young lady who told me I couldn't write, now has asked me to autograph several books for her and her family. So, so I say that to say, never stop. Like when people criticize you, sometimes it's based on their own lack of imagination about what your life could be. And so you don't need anybody to agree with what you want to do. You just have to do it and do it with as much vigor and excellence as possible and keep it moving.
Yeah, I mean that story kind of shows you like which one of you is the patient one and which one of you is the impatient one, right? I mean, man, that must have been with that writing coach saying, "Hey, prepare your ego." What a good life lesson.
Yeah, I mean, she was harsh too. I mean,
Yeah.
but I mean, I'll give you this one quick thing that when she ripped it up and I ripped up my writing the first time and I sent it back to her and I started defending myself, I never forget. She dropped a bar, what I think is a bar on me, and she said, "If you can't take me criticizing your writing, how do you think you're going to handle critics looking at your books and reading your writing?" And fast forward. Now, as you know, I just released a couple of videos with Drumeo, and the first one was a more jazz centric one. This last one was, which I didn't realize they were going to really turn into a video. It was kind of a fun thing we did while I was there. The Nirvana one, man, that was probably one of the first videos. First of all, that got that many views, but that got that much negativity. I mean, there was a lot of positivity, but there was also like people in the comments like trying to be very negative. And I remember talking to the folks at Drummer. I was like, how do you deal with people who say negative stuff on your videos? They were like, actually, Ulysses, we love the negativity because it's engagement. And so what I've learned now in life is if you can't deal with negative feedback or commentary, then you're not ready for the public. You're not ready to put your stuff out there. So I just now learned to take it in stride. And some things I'll see and I'm like, oh, actually, I'm going to respond to that. But I'm not going to respond in a defensive way. I'm going to respond in a way that can actually educate those that are, watching it. So anyway.
Yeah, man, I actually had a lot of fun watching that video, man. The funny thing is you played some of the coolest stuff like ever. How surprised were you when you heard Dave Grohl's version?
Well, you got what you saw was actually honest feedback. Like, so when they played it for the first time and you saw that was what happened.
Mm-hmm.
They like chopped it up a little bit, but for the most part, all those reactions were like true. Like all that, I was laughing. I was like, I pray my mother doesn't see this video because I was cursing so bad in that video. But yeah, I mean, when I heard Dave Grohl's version, I was like, oh wow, like it was actually simpler than I thought.
That's exactly what I want to talk about. It is, I mean, not all rock music, but a lot of it is like about doing really simple stuff with like
Yeah,
100% conviction. And that
yeah,
reminds
and
me, I mean, it reminds me so much of Art Blakey.
yes, and there and I think that was what, without going off on a tangent, what I learned from that Dave Grohl example is the same thing I learned studying with Steve Jordan. Steve taught me about drum orchestration. He was like, and if you listen to a lot of the great drummers, be they rock, R&B, or whatever, they created drum parts, right? And so yes, to your point, yeah, that what Art Blakey did with FIFA, with Africa or Buena's Delight is the same thing Dave Grohl did. And actually, there's an interview someone just sent me this morning where Pharrell interviewed Dave Grohl. I don't know if you've seen that one. And
No, I
Dave
haven't.
Grohl, but oh man, I'll send it to you when I get off the interview. Pharrell interviewed Dave Grohl, and Dave Grohl basically said, "Listen, I'm not a great drummer." He says he's like, "I'm a simple drummer." He said, "All I did was I went and listened to Cameo's drummer, the drummer from Gap Band." He was like, all the Black Soul drummers. He was like, and I created my version of that. And matter of fact, there's a Charlie Wilson Gap Band song. It's called "Early in the Morning," and one of the first fills is like bottom, 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 and Dave literally, that's how he starts off one of his tunes, like bottom, bottom, but like is much more open and the tuning's different. So yeah, man, it's all about orchestration and parts, and that's genreless. Like that that
Mm-hmm.
that goes across the genres.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I want to swing back to something you said
Sure.
earlier about how, as drummers, like they don't teach the drummer, they're teaching the whole rhythm section, They're not giving a ton of
Yeah.
specific feedback. So at Juilliard, do you think your approach is different because you're a drummer?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's so funny. I've even had students that have been like, "Well, why don't you read a score?" And I tell them I don't need a score. Like, I'm a drummer, which means I'm used to taking a lot of information, and most of what people write doesn't reflect all the information in the chart. So, if anything, for me, a score is actually a distraction because while I'm trying to follow a score, my ears are actually getting the entire picture. So that was a big difference, I think, for a lot of people. The other thing is, in my combo, I put a lot of emphasis on the rhythm section. Most combo directors in jazz, they put a lot of emphasis on horns. They put a lot of emphasis on maybe harmony, but their emphasis is really like 90-10, where it's all about horn shaping and developing and sectionals and tuning. And then the rhythm section just kind of gets no feedback. Versus I'm the exact opposite, where I comment on the horns. I'm like, okay, horns, y'all out of tune here. Y'all need to deal with this figure. Hey, how are y'all dealing with the blend and balance? So I'll deal with that. But then I spent a lot of time harping on the drummer, because if the drummer can orchestrate in the right way, it can enhance whatever the horn players are doing. So I spent a lot of time kind of coaching from the back end. And I think that's why a lot of my ensembles, at least I've been told, have a more complete approach, because I basically bring up the rear, and deal with the rhythm section and giving them guidance on how to enhance what the horn section is doing, as opposed to all this attention on the horn players and not any attention on the rhythm section.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean that's one of the reasons I have a job too. Like band directors, rhythm sections is just like hand in hand with drums. It's like just not a thing they
Yeah.
understand. You know,
Yeah.
you ever have to like stop yourself from giving the drummer too many comments so it doesn't sound like a drum lesson? You ever have to like kind of drown them out a little bit?
Yeah. So that was so when I started teaching at Juilliard, I had to learn how to decide what is my preference and what is best for the music, right? So, like for instance, all the drummers at Juilliard, I mean, all the students are very talented, but I've been really fortunate the last few years. I've had really great drummers in my ensemble. I have a drummer right now, give him a shout out, Hank Allen Barfield. Hank's really talented, and he's a strong drummer. He's been there for a while too, so like he understands like the Juilliard way, and that's a whole other conversation. But anyway, there are moments where I'll say to Hank, "Hey Hank, can you do this or do that?" And he'll be like, "Okay, cool." And he doesn't take it personal because he knows like, okay, it's for the music. Versus there's been times where I'm like, I don't like that, but I don't think it's my place to get in the way of his expression. I mean, there is funny. We were in class a couple of weeks ago, and like he was just playing. I don't know if he had an extra coffee that day or something, but he was just hyped up, and he was doing all this album stuff. And a couple of times he didn't land on the one that we just both laughed. We looked at each other and laughed about it. But it wasn't my job to be like, don't ever do that again. It was just like, man, he's like on something. Part of my ensemble class also is a space where students get to just explore, and they just explore playing together. And so that's another important thing I've had to learn, which is why, to your point, I try not to turn it into a drum lesson because there is a certain point where it's like I need to give them room to find their way because people did it for me. Like when I played in a lot of ensembles, people gave me space to like figure out. Like I'll just say this and end it. McBride was a master at that, or is a master at that, because he gave me and Sands both time to evolve. Like the way we played when we first started playing with him is very different than how we did on our final record together. And he gave us space to evolve. So I incorporate that a lot into my teaching.
Yeah, man, I love that. That's beautiful. And it's also a very nice segue into a question I've actually been wanting to ask you for a while.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong and if I have the story wrong, but I think you said that you met Christian McBride at a summer camp, right?
Well, so that's partly true. I met him at Juilliard when I was a student my freshman year because we had an improv class, and our improv class used to involve bringing in guest artists every week. So the first time I met him was there. And then I was invited to be part of his summer camp, my freshman summer, summer after my freshman year in college. And so that's when we kind of started forming a bond. And then when I came back, they invited me back to do the camp like 3 or 4 years later. Actually, I think 4 years later. And that's when he even says, he heard me and he was like, man, there's something that changed in your playing. I grew up basically. And that's when we started working together. So I'd known him since I was 18.
Yeah. So you said you grew up, but even though it's been a while, maybe is there anything you can pinpoint like to evolve that
life between so when he met me at 18, between him hearing me again, I think I was 23. No, I was like 24, 25. I'd been married at that time. I had been playing gigs around town. Like I was playing, restaurant gigs. I had a car. I was like, playing with various singers and big bands. And like, so when I was 18, I was playing, I think to keep it short, I was playing what everybody wanted me to play. When I became 24, 25, I already had a kind of a philosophy of how I wanted to play. And so it was much more mature and it was just much more together. And I think it for someone like him, though I was young, he had a lot to work with because it was like, okay, I'd already been out here hitting. I was kind of a well-oiled machine. I needed experience. I needed more touring experience, but I had playing experience. So I think it was a difference between, playing the instrument and having experience and knowledge and maturity in playing. And that was kind of the big difference for me.
Cool. Yeah, man. Nice. So you got time for just one more quick one?
Sure. I'll take, I haven't even looked at the clock. What time is it?
10:28.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I'll take 2 more.
All right. So 2 more, huh? Okay. 2 more. What albums are you checking out right now?
Oh man, that's great. So I was talking to you earlier about how I'm a contributing writer for Jacksonville Music Experience, and maybe you can help me with this. So my last writing assignment for this year actually is my favorite albums of 2023. So I have to pick 10. And so I'm doing a lot of listening right now. So I just checked out, and then there's Grammy voting too. So I've been listening to some of that stuff. So like yesterday, I listened to Palace stuff. Joe Chambers' new record, which is killing. Jonathan Blake's new record that came out this year. Michelle and Cello has a record called The Omnicore Real Book. I listened to Lakeisha Benjamin's record called Phoenix. VJ Ayer's new trio record. And there's some other stuff too, but those kind of stick out. Oh, there's a young lady who's a great jazz violinist who just Christian just produced her record. Her name is Kirsten Stevens. It's called Queen's Rising or something like that. It's actually a really good record, kind of contemporary jazz. Gregory Porter has a new Christmas record out that is just beautiful to listen to. Sean Mason, one of my former students at Juilliard, got a great piano record out on Jazz and Lincoln Center's Blue Engine label, and Jahari Stampley, which I just wrote a review. Jahari just won the Herbie Hancock competition. So listen to his. Oh, and then like other stuff that's not jazz. No Name. It's a great hip hop rapper. Her name is literally No Name. Noname. She's got a killing record. Butcher Brown, I was listening to their record. So yeah, man, like I actually love it now because I'm like checking out a lot of different stuff. And then shout out to my own record. I got another single dropping this Friday, London Town, for my Generation Y band. And the album is dropping January 19th. So it's a really cool season of a lot of new music and new things that are coming out.
Yeah, man, I can't wait to look at the recording of this video and actually jot all those names down. You just gave me a ton of
Oh
stuff.
yeah,
That's
I
awesome.
just put
Thank
like
you.
15 records.
No, that's awesome. That was great, man.
Yeah, it's a lot of new music out there.
Yeah, and a lot of old music. Too much.
Yes. Yes.
So, one last one. This is my favorite question to ask all the guests, since drummers are kind of known for being a little rambunctious. What's a little bit of trouble you've gotten into in the back of the band room?
Oh, that's funny. Well, I would say pre cell phone texting trouble back in the day, definitely sending notes to people. My best friends were all percussionists, so we would be throwing spitballs at folks, and all the stuff you're not supposed to. I think the only kind of trouble I get into now is if I'm not if it's the rare times where I'm in a band that it's not a band I'm leading. Sometimes I get buried in my cell phone. It's a deep dark hole for a lot of us, where I start texting and don't let me have my headphones in. I start watching videos and stuff. So that's probably the most trouble I get into now. But yeah, back in the day, definitely there were spitballs formed and thrown, and maybe a water bottle or two, and just being rambunctious, as you say.
Yeah, right. I love that question because it's like pretty telling about the different like generations of people. I had John Riley
Right.
on, and
Oh,
when I
nice.
asked, actually, it was the day after, the morning, like the exact day after you interviewed him, I
Oh,
had booked him.
nice.
And it was funny because it's like the same exact setup, same ring light shining in his glasses. But it was funny because I asked him that and he had to think for a while and was like, maybe I said something disrespectful to an elder at some point. It's like, man, you should have played the flute, John. Like,
Yeah,
we're not,
you're like, give me the juicy stuff.
give me the juicy stuff. You're supposed to be
Yeah.
back there like destroying stuff. But all right, dude. So thank you so much for your generosity
Of course.
towards
course.
everyone, man. Like,
I try.
Noel,
man. I'm a fan of you.
I'm a fan of you, man. And Noel's dad saw that I was in, I made a little status about it. And he's like, "Oh, you just gave Noel a pair of brushes." And I'm like, "Of course you did, man. Like, he gave me a pair of sticks too. Like, you're very generous, man. Seriously. I hope you get uh-huh.
No, I was just gonna say, man, I think it's important for us to pay it forward. And in the simplest way, like, there, for everything that we want in life, there's something we have that other people want, right? So like for you, right? Like there's people you want to interview or whatever, but then there's people who are trying to get to you. And so I think if we can have that grace and that empathy and pay things forward, then whatever we may need will come to us, and not in that you do it to receive, but I just think we if we could be a little bit kinder to ourselves and to other people, I think the world it'll move a little smoother. So yeah.
Yeah, well, seriously, thank you again for your kindness. I'm excited for the book. I'm excited for the single to come out. And I hope you get some really strong coffee, man.
Oh, brother, listen, I'm in New York. My favorite coffee. Are you a coffee guy?
Oh yeah, I'm on my second cup.
Do you know about Stumptown coffee?
No.
Oh, okay. So Google Stumptown coffee. So I used to not be a I know I'm going over time, but I used to not be a coffee guy. But when I got into cigars, coffee became like a thing for me, and I really love decaf coffee too because I just love the flavor of it. Stumptown is a really beautiful a roast, and it's a place here in New York. I mean, it's inside the Ace Hotel. Anyway, it's a strong, beautiful coffee.
At this point, we had to end the interview because the Zoom meeting ended, but I hope everybody got something out of this conversation with Ulysses, and stay tuned. Within the next week, I will have my interview with Neil Grover, and there's a long list of guests I'm really excited to potentially have on. And as always, thanks for hanging out in the back of the band room.